Hi, Pokemon Unite community. I'm glad you came into my office today. This is never an easy conversation, but I just want to give it to you straight. You have been infected with brain rot, specifically Mewtwo Brain Rot, and I'm not sure that there's a cure. Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy and honorary MD this episode as I talk to you about a problem that is facing the Pokemon Unite community and something that I think has actually been messing with us for a little while now, and I'm worried that it's just going to get worse, and that is Mewtwo Brain Rot. So what is Mewtwo Brain Rot? What does it look like? How did this happen? And how do we possibly fix this? Now, I know a lot of you might already know what I'm talking about, but for those of you who don't, you're going to find out very, very quickly. And I must warn you, it's important that you check for the signs of Mewtwo Brain Rot and make sure that you don't develop it early. If you catch it early, you might be able to save yourself. Right now inside of Pokemon Unite, and I understand that everyone can have a different opinion on this, but right now inside of Pokemon Unite, I believe we are noticing a general skill decline of the player base, and I think a lot of that is due to Mewtwo Brain Rot. Mewtwo Brain Rot is essentially something that was caused by Mewtwo X and Mewtwo Y because these Pokemon were so dummy good upon release and so easy to use that they convinced a lot of players to play the game in a super suboptimal way. Essentially, just wandering around aimlessly, pressing their A buttons, and for the most part, not really being punished for it. And that's one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest contributing factors to Mewtwo Brain Rot, is the fact that the way they participated in the game and the way they played Mewtwo was fine, sadly enough. You'll notice a lot of Mewtwo players like this, and sometimes you'll see them switch over to another Pokemon that they've heard was broken from a YouTube thumbnail, but quickly realize that it's not the Mewtwo that maybe they were looking for. Very Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is not the Mewtwo you're looking for. You're going to continue to lose right now. They don't really know how to fight. They just stay engaged in fights way too long, or they kind of don't take fights. They seem to wander around the map in a bunch of weird angles. Like, you don't know if they're going to an objective. Sometimes they're farming, sometimes they're not. They use their moves in very bizarre ways. I had a Mewtwo in my game the other day that started off the Rayquaza fight. Nobody knew exactly where everyone was. You know, you kind of have that moment where you're all dancing a little bit, like, where is everybody? Let's see how this thing's gonna go. And they just start off by side striking Rayquaza. Using their move that makes them unstoppable, is a sure hit, will knock up one or multiple enemies, and they just hit Ray with it, and then just kind of autoed for a little bit, and then got KO'd. It's really interesting to see, but there was a time where Mewtwo players could essentially just kind of hold this A button, and then things would mostly work out. You'll also notice them Unite moving at very weird times, and this is not only Mewtwo players. Sometimes you'll see your team's Blastoise throw its Unite move at 2 minutes 30 seconds and miss everybody, and you'll think, okay, now that's not just a Mewtwo problem, but I notice Mewtwo players specifically, they just throw their Unite moves either way early or way after they would have been useful. They don't even really seem to have an idea of what's going on. I think they just notice after a little while that the little icon's flashing and they kind of hit the button. One really huge indication of Mewtwo Brain Rot is a play style that became very popular with Mewtwo, but now really doesn't work with any Pokemon in the game. Mewtwo used to jungle, and then it would come into lane and essentially just never leave. It would just stand on the goal zone mega, hitting you. It would KO. There was nothing you could do about it. And now you see a lot of players, even if they're not playing Mewtwo, they're still playing with this mentality. They'll go through their central area one time, they'll head into lane, and they'll never leave it. They'll just dive onto the enemy goal zone the whole time, hoping to get KOs, and it's without question a huge Mewtwo Brain Rot issue. The plays that they used to make don't work anymore, but they are not changing them. I know what a lot of you are saying right now in the comments. Jake, let them cook. Jake, let them cook. I'm sure my comments will be flooded with, Jake, let these Mewtwo's cook. They're simply trying to cook, but we're coming up to a very weird precipice where they're not going to be allowed to pick Mewtwo anymore, and that means they're either going to lose so much they get upset with the game, or they're just going to kind of Mewtwo their way into a new Pokemon that can't really play that way. I've often found that this playstyle feels a lot like they are playing Diablo. I think when Mewtwo X and Y were released and Zacian was kind of like this, it's like you're playing Diablo. Like everything's just a little minion and you can kind of just walk around like spamming your buttons and things get KO'd. And the more and more balanced the game becomes and the harder and harder it is to have Pokemon that do that, the worse and worse these players are playing. Now let's talk about how this happened, because of course you have to blame the player, but as they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. But as Spragels says, hey, why don't you hate them both a little bit, huh? So here we go. Let's talk about what happened. Pokemon Unite released 2 Pokemon, Mewtwo X and Y, and then again, Zacian. Zacian was kind of like the brain rot to come. And these Pokemon were so unbelievably busted, and they required such little skill. Even players who were bad at the game could punish high skill players in crazy ways. Literally, you just kind of go near a Mewtwo Y, it hits you with one of its moves, you can't really do anything, and then all of a sudden it autos you a couple times and you're completely gone. A player with very little skill in the game can do that. All they really have to do is press a move once and press their A button. Now, if the game is more balanced, that's really not the case. So what has happened is the developers of this game have created a situation where many players for months at a time were playing a game of Pokemon Unite that essentially shouldn't exist. It did for a little while, but it really shouldn't exist. And now you're throwing them to the wolves. You're throwing them in the deep water and it's swimming with sharks. They don't know how to play this video game because you gave them an easy win button character. It's a real mess. They never learned how to play. They never learned how to rotate to an objective. They don't know what to do at Rayquaza. Sometimes they're backcapping, sometimes they're farming, sometimes they're just kind of, and I'm serious about this. When I look at them, they're just kind of aimlessly wandering around like a zombie looking for brains, but they don't even know what brains look like when they find them. Without question, the unbalanced state of their releases has caused this more than anything, but it is up to the Mewtwo Brain Rotted players to start to try to figure out what's happening inside of Pokemon Unite as well. You got to take some personal responsibility here, Mewtwo players. I understand you were thrown into a game, especially if you were a new player. You saw how good Mewtwo was. You're like, I'm just going to play that. That's how I win these matches. And then you won some matches and you were like, I'm good at Pokemon Unite. Well, now next season, Mewtwo and Zacian are banned, and then following that, we're going to have draft into the master rank. Something is going to need to be done, and if you're the kind of player who has played like this for a while, you need to, no offense, get good and stop cooking with Mewtwo for a little while and start learning how to actually play this game. On the developer standpoint, we really can't have more releases like this. I pray Miraidon is just not this at all, but I think I kind of know what that's going to look like. But without question, now that we're moving into a system where these EX Pokemon are banned and we're having draft and ranked, which is a whole other conversation that I think we need to talk about because we are not ready for this to enter the ranked mode of the game. I think we also need to have a discussion about the matchmaking inside of Pokemon Unite because you are putting players into a ranked system that they can't even participate in. And for a long time, that has been the case, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse when you take away their easy win Pokemon and when you put a draft system in front of them. They're either going to completely grief their teams, which sometimes they're doing already, or they're going to stop playing the game altogether because I don't know what happened, it just got kind of hard. Somehow we are going to need to teach these players to play the game better while at the same time probably not putting them into that draft system before they're ready. And this is something I've been talking about for a while, but if we want Master Rank to be a higher level of competitive play and we don't want to change too much else about Pokemon Unite, people are going to need the ability to fall out of Master Rank. I've actually heard many players talk about this. They say, I hit Master Rank, now I can finally breathe and just do whatever I want. And every season I do sort of a road to master rank, I noticed that some of the matches in Ultra moving up to Masters are way better than my master rank games. And I think players get into master rank, they realize they can't go down at all, and they actually get worse and worse and worse. Not even a Mewtwo Y or X brain rot, but just a master rank brain rot? Why are you changing what you're doing? If your goal getter Zeraora is winning 48% of the time and you're still climbing in master rank, you really don't have a reason to. So while I want to blame all the Mewtwo players out there, because it's just fun to do, and you knew what you were doing to an extent, you silly gooses, I have to say, if we are making these changes, we're gonna need to make changes to matchmaking as well. We're gonna need to change some of the things inside the game if you want to do something about how low skill the player base is, while you are adding new higher skill elements to the game. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and if you have Mewtwo Brain Rot, make sure you see a local physician. I am obviously a doctor, but I can't give real medical advice to any of you with Mewtwo Brain Rot. I know some of you believe you are too far gone, but there are things you can do to help. There are ways to change this. Please don't be alone, reach out. I love you, thanks for watching. Nerf Mewtwo.